Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for joining the British Society for Gene and Cell Therapy Early Career Researcher Seminar Series. I'm Carly Bliss, and today we have the huge honor of welcoming Dr. Isaiah Hankel, who will be outlining the transition from PhD roles in academia into highly skilled roles in industry. So first up, we'll go through a few housekeeping rules, just so you can submit your questions for the end of the seminar. So you'll see on your screen at the moment how you submit those questions. You'll need to be signed into your YouTube channel or your Google account and submit those questions in the live chat box. Everyone will be able to see those questions. Please include your name and affiliation. And the earlier you ask your question, the more likely it is to be submitted to Isaiah at the end. So please ask your questions early. And if you're having any problems with those, with that live chat box, you can email your questions to that admin email address at the bottom, and it will make its way to me by the end of the seminar. So back to Isaiah. He did his undergraduate study at Franklin and Marshall College in Pennsylvania, and received his PhD in anatomy and cell biology from the University of Iowa. He has worked with numerous leaders in the biotechnology industry, including some big names such as Miltenyi Biotech, BD Biosciences, TreeStar, Pfizer, Roche, some of the really big names. He is now an expert in the biotechnology industry and specializes in helping people transition from academia into cutting-edge career tracks in industry. So Isaiah is the founder of Cheeky Scientist, which is an industry training platform for academic PhDs. His Cheeky Scientist online courses and training programs have been purchased and used by hundreds of thousands of biotech professionals in over 150 countries. And today you have 100% unlimited access to him for the next 90 minutes. So really make use of that, submit your questions, really engage with the seminar, and it will be really great. So Isaiah is also author of Black Hole Focus, which is a book that debuted as #1 in business nonfiction in the UK. And you can also buy his most recent book, Science of Intelligent Achievement, which came out in 2018. In all, Isaiah has delivered corporate presentations to over 100,000 people, including 1,000 workshops and keynotes in over 50 countries. Isaiah is actually based in the Midwest in the USA, so it's really early in the day for him at the moment. So we're really grateful and really thrilled that you've agreed to give this seminar in collaboration with BSGCT. So with all of that introduction, I think we can all clearly see why Isaiah is the man to give us the blueprint that ensures a PhD level industry job offer. So I warn you, his enthusiasm is really quite infectious. This is going to be really fun. So buckle up, folks. Isaiah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you, everyone. Very excited to be here and appreciate all of you joining us for today's webinar. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about a 5-week job search blueprint that ensures a PhD level industry job offer, whether you are a PhD student or a postdoc or in another academic position. Currently, this will be very relevant to you. So I'm going to go through a couple of things here, some high-level points that I'll be covering today. It's going to take about 60 to 70 minutes to go through this, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So the 5-week job search methodology, if there was a blueprint like the protocols that you use in the lab or maybe a lesson plan, what would that look like? What would the major chapters be? First, updating your resume to highlight transferable job skills is crucial. So going from an academic CV to an industry CV, or if you want to call it an industry resume, and learning to leverage transferable skills just briefly, such as innovation, research, analysis, not just a very niche technical skill that is likely being done by robotics in industry. If you think putting HPLC on your resume is going to get you hired, you have another thing coming, and we're going to talk about that. Number 2, improving your personal brand on LinkedIn and making your profile visible. Most PhD students don't realize that there's a separate LinkedIn for employers called LinkedIn Recruiter or LinkedIn Talent Insights. You're probably invisible on it. There's a recruiter button, so to speak, you have to turn on to even be visible. So let's say you have a bad day in the lab, a tough day in academia, you're looking for jobs, you can't take it anymore, you have maybe a year left, and you're surprised that no recruiters are contacting you. Nobody you reach out to replies to you. Nobody's responding to your resume. A big part of that is you're not visible on LinkedIn. We're going to discuss that. Number 3, ask for job search referrals from your connections. So networking is not when you connect with somebody. If any of you have ever been to an academic conference and you had a poster session and you collected business cards, or those university cards that are like business cards from people, and you thought, I'm networking. And then you went home after the conference and those business cards, they just sat somewhere. Nobody contacted you. Right? It's because that you weren't networking, you were just connecting. Networking is what happens during the follow-up process when you build a professional relationship, and that works towards a job referral, a chance to work together with that person. That's the natural course that's supposed to happen, but it's on you as the job candidate to carry it forward. We're going to discuss this. Number 4, conduct informational interviews with potential coworkers. Right? So in industry, networking is the currency of industry. Elevating somebody else's credibility is adding value to them. Everyone loves giving advice and their opinions so much that they often give you their unsolicited advice and opinions. Imagine if you ask them for advice, you ask them for opinions. Professionals working in jobs, especially those with PhDs who have been where you are, love to give this advice. This is formally, right, called an informational interview, which is actually informal. We'll talk about that. And then number 5, prepare for a virtual job interview. You're going to have some sort of phone screen, very, very likely a video interview. You might be asked to submit a video of yourself as in terms of a video resume at this stage. Some companies are doing this. A panel interview is very common. How do you handle that? We're going to talk about a lot of the questions that are being asked today, not questions from the 1980s, right? What's your biggest weakness? The ones we all hear about through the ether of academia or otherwise, but questions that are being asked today, very specific questions. I'm going to show you 99 examples and then tell you why you don't have to learn or memorize any of these examples. I'm going to give you a framework for answering any interview question. So with that, this 5-week methodology, this is not something that I made up yesterday. This is something that we've used for over 9 years to get thousands and thousands of PhDs hired from every different type of background in 152 different countries in the top global companies. It's been published recently in the Harvard Business Review. You can read this article, a 5-week guide to getting a job. A lot of what I'm going to discuss is discussed also more briefly in the article. It's also been published in part in Nature. And this article focuses a bit more on the mistakes to avoid. As PhDs, we very often hear from somebody else that we should leave our PhD off of our resume because putting a master's on there makes us more likely to be hired. A PhD makes us overqualified. Or we hear from one person who works at one company that our resume should be 3 pages, or that it should have a little bit of color on it, or it should be a certain type of form, or it should only have technical skills. We hear from one person, a sample size of 1, an N of 1, and because we don't understand anything about the job search industry, and it is an industry, we believe it. This is a big mistake. You have to use your same analytical skills, the same scientific methodology, the same process of finding the most credible information, which is what I'm about to present to you, in your job search as well, or you're going to waste months, if not years. Most importantly, you have to remember your value as a PhD, which is a big part of this article in Nature that I recommend. And I'm showing you this because I want you to know this is highly credible information that will work for you despite any unique PhD background that you have, unique situation. Maybe you need a visa. Maybe you'll have a gap on your resume. Maybe you had a challenging supervisor. Maybe you won't have a letter of recommendation. You can still get hired. You have to know this, and you have to buy into this process that I'm showing you. There's no way around this process. You're not above the process. You do have to follow it. And so the sooner you can commit to it, the better. And for those of you who are PhD students, it can take 1-2 years to fully build up a network if you don't have that component, right? So while this is a 5-week process, building up a network, if you're starting from 0, can be the longest part of the process. Yes, you can do it very quickly, but it's a good time to start is now. So with that, we're going to jump into this methodology, updating your resume and highlighting transferable skills. This is how I like to frame it to start. A good resume isn't enough to get you a job, but a bad resume is enough to keep you from getting a job. So while we're talking about resumes first, and it is important, it's not the entire part of your job search. As PhDs, we think that writing is everything. We actually frame our job search, I've seen it over and over again, within the academic context. We think, okay, in academia, writing is important. Letters of recommendation, grants, papers. So clearly my resume is going to have 3 reviewers. And if I can just get my resume past that 3rd reviewer, then I'm going to be hired. That's how publishing a peer-reviewed journal article works, not your resume. Your resume, less is more. I'm going to talk about this. Your resume will stay with you through your job search, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. So I want you to make sure you keep a resume in its place. For those of you that are uploading resumes right now, you're not hearing anything back. That's because it's not just about your resume. There are other aspects to it. But with that, we're going to jump into resumes. I want to show you this first. So if you take a moment, look at this software program. What is this software program? What is it showing, right? I have some things over here on the right. Keywords, get a ranking, a gap on your resume could be annotated. This is the software program that filters your resume for any company you apply to, any company over probably 5 people. But even small companies are using, like Indeed, small biotech, pharmaceutical tech companies, they're using Indeed, et cetera, which has their own version of this software that's called, in the industry, ATS software, applicant tracking system software. So for those of you watching this, I'm guessing if you've ever uploaded a resume, you've been asked what your salary expectations are. And you're probably like, whoa, too fast, too soon. I don't even know you yet. They ask this so they can weed you out. You really want to get your resume to the hands of somebody working at the company. I'm going to talk about that. But this filter is why you're not getting any responses, or you're just getting that automated response. Thank you for submitting your resume. We'll get back to you. Then you hear nothing for weeks. And it takes you 2 more weeks until you upload one resume again. If you're going after one resume, if you're going after one job lead at a time and waiting to hear back until you submit another resume for another job lead, you're doing your job search incorrectly. Job search is kind of like a second job in itself. But once you know the process, it becomes a lot easier. So the reason I'm showing you this is you can see some of these rows are grayed out. That means they're instantly not considered. Unfortunately, a lot of PhDs don't know this. This is crucial. We think in terms of trial and error, because that's what we learn in academia. I can try anything. I can do an experiment, etc. The only consequence is maybe some negative data that will help me get on the right track. In your job search, this is not the case. You can do lasting damage to your job search, to your opportunities through trial and error. Many companies, if you upload a resume, for example, they consider you for a job and they reject you for that job because your resume was done poorly or any other reason. They will not consider you for any other job for 6 months, some companies even up to a year, especially the larger companies that many of you would want to work at. So you are burning bridges if you refuse to follow the process and to learn how to do this correctly. You can't just wing it in your job search. You can't just say, I want to get a job in industry. The average industry salary for PhDs right now is about $91,112, according to Science. They don't just hand out those salaries to people who spend a few minutes here or there, a few hours here or there on their job search, and who only do the bare minimum on their resume. Okay, so what do you do for your resume? How can you have a exemplary industry resume or CV? If you want to call it a CV, since you're all in the UK, I'll say CV. There's 5 different types of formats that are working very well in industry right now. Now you might think I've never even heard of 1 or 2 of these. That's fine. They're important to have in your toolbox. The key to today, especially in the competitive job market for the higher level PhD jobs, is to make your resume as targeted as possible. And that's not just for your keywords on your resume, but for the format that you're using. I'm going to go through each of these individually, but you can see a comparison here. If you're submitting the same resume to a hiring manager as you are to a recruiter, you're doing it wrong. Okay, a recruiter, they care more about checking off technical skills. This is why understanding how the job search industry works is important. So a recruiter will be hired by a company, and the company will give them a list of technical skills that they have to check off and do a screen for before you even get to meet the hiring manager. So you want to move the technical skills list, which is usually done in 3 columns, to the top of the resume. If you're not sure what to use, our gold standard resume, the gold standard resume that I recommend is the reverse chronological order resume. However, if you have no industry experience, you've been in academia your whole life, which is most of you, and that was me too, that's okay. I'm going to recommend a functional resume. A functional resume doesn't go by time, right? It's not chronological. Instead, it's by relevancy. You're pulling the skills that company cares about the most to the top of the resume. So instead of having to put academic job titles on your resume, you can put the skills at the top in the work experience section and say gained as a graduate research assistant, gained as a postdoctoral fellow. By the way, if you have academic job titles only on your resume, you will never make it past the ATS software, because this software is smart enough now to know, oh, you're bolding this word or you're pulling this keyword out, graduate research assistant. That's not in my database, because the hiring manager is not going to say, oh, I really want a graduate research assistant. They don't use that language in industry. The hiring manager doesn't have a PhD, has no idea what that phrase even means. We think we're like elevating PhD student by fooling industry employers with the graduate research assistant term. You're not. Okay, so you want to use a functional format instead. I'm going to show you exactly how that's done. A combination resume, very popular. It's great if you have some relevant experience. So essentially, it's a combination of what? Of the gold standard, right? The reverse chronological and the functional. And then finally, a lot of the higher end positions, data scientist, medical science liaison, they prefer a one-page resume. Now, why would the highest level, most competitive positions prefer a one-page resume? And that's why there's a sidebar. Essentially, you're putting 2 pages onto one using a sidebar. So you would never have a 2-page sidebar resume. I've seen PhDs try to do this. Don't do that. Because less is more, and the ability to simplify complex information and complex experiences and to target it specifically for the job at hand is what is valued by industry employers. I'm going to show you each of these individually now. So this is the gold standard format, reverse chronological. Contact information is at the top. Your LinkedIn URL must be added at the top today. This is not a nice to have anymore. It's a must have. Please put a phone number and an email that you will actually respond to. Most PhDs, we're on academic time, which I think, believe it or not, no matter how hard you work or how much you're thinking in academia, is very similar to beach time compared to industry. Industry employers, they're making calls now. Some of them don't reach out to you first for a phone screen. They'll just call you. And if you don't answer their phone call, they're moving on to the next candidate. Things move much faster in industry, very often in a good way. And it's also why you get paid more. You have to be responsive. If you're uploading a resume and you're not responding to the phone call, you don't have your notifications turned on your phone, right? To at least see that there was a missed phone call and call back within a few minutes, to excuse yourself and call back, then you're just dabbling in your job search. Once you become serious, you have to have a cell phone number. You have to have an email that you're very, very responsive to. The first section here is the professional summary. You're pulling out your 3 biggest career highlights and putting them in your summary. Your work experience is next. Then your education. Most resumes that I get for the first pass, or for industry CVs that I get for the first pass, have the education at the top. This is, again, academic mindset, right? In industry, they want to see the experience. They want to see results. We're going to talk about that. You have results. And I'm going to tell you some of the results that you've likely achieved that you can put on your resume. Then your technique, software, instrumentation. You can slightly adapt this subheading depending on your background, but for most of you, it'll be technique, software, instrumentation. And then affiliations and hobbies. The very last bullet point, you can have multiple bullet points here. Something that's non-science, non-STEM, not related to your academic work, volunteer experience, something that humanizes you, because it gives the employer, and these initial gatekeepers, again, are hiring managers, recruiters without PhDs, it gives them a way to break the ice with you on a phone screen, right? Let's say your hobby is swimming, or you play an instrument, or you volunteer somewhere. They will ask you about this, so put it on there. If you can't think of anything, your entire life's academia, put hiking. You walk to the lab, you walk to the classroom, you're into hiking, okay? Spending time outdoors, whatever it might be. Something that humanizes you. Very important. So that's the first format. I want to show you the second format, which is the functional resume. Now, this is going to be a game changer for most of you. Most of you do not have industry experience. If you have a work experience section like this, and I'm guessing most of you do or will, if you hadn't seen this webinar, you're going to be in trouble when it comes to the applicant tracking system software or to the employer. Again, think of the non-PhD, somebody who went to school, likely got a bachelor's level degree in communications, human resources, et cetera. No idea of STEM skills, doesn't know what in vivo means. I had a call with an employer that we were helping fill positions for, and they brought on their recruitment team. And the recruitment team asked me, as we were going through the technical skills they wanted their people they were hiring to have, what does in vivo mean? I'm telling you that because it's important for you to know the lack of training in your specialized area that any employer, the initial gatekeepers will have. There'll be people down the line towards the end of the interview process that you'll talk to, but initially they don't. And your resume is that, or your CV is that initial document that they're going to see. So if they see this, they're very likely not going to call you. So what do you do instead? You use a functional resume format. You take this work experience section and you change it to, drum roll, to this. I know a lot of you are thinking this has to be illegal. Too good to be true. This is called a functional resume format. It's been around for decades. I didn't invent this, decades. It's for people who don't have a lot of experience in a particular field yet. In your case, industry overall. So what you're doing here is you're pulling out the technical skills that they're asking for on the job posting, such as, and this is just an example, innovation and advanced microRNA techniques, or the transferable skills, project management. And underneath you're saying, gained as a graduate research assistant at XYZ University or gained as a postdoctoral researcher. Do you see the difference? Now, when they skim your resume, they're going to see this first and they're going to say, oh, okay, it's worth me reading more. So they're not going to discount you or count you out right away because you only have academic job titles. That's the functional format, which I'm showing you here. The same sections as the gold standard, which is the reverse chronological, except for the work experience section highlights those technical skills and transferable skills first. This is something you can also do on LinkedIn. It's why LinkedIn changed its work experience section to just an experience section. You can order it by relevancy. You don't have to put graduate research assistant on LinkedIn. More on that later. This is the recruiter format that I went over. The only difference here between the gold standard and the recruiter is the technical skills are brought to the top. Combination format. This is where you're taking your most relevant skills for the job, putting it at the top, right? That's the functional resume format part of this combination. And then you're doing reverse chronological order for the rest of the resume. And this is the sidebar format. Now, again, don't have multiple pages of the sidebar. A lot of the positions that I see this work the best for right now, the top two are medical science liaison. It might be called a super rep in the UK. For pharmaceutical companies, application scientists roles, which by volume are the number one job that PhDs transition into, the number one non-bench job that PhDs transition into. If you haven't heard of application scientist, field application engineer, field application specialist, I recommend checking that out. This is a very popular resume right now, but it requires you to shorten the amount of information you're putting on the resume or the CV. A lot of you can't even imagine crafting an industry CV that looks like this, right? Let's just go back to maybe one of these, even the recruiter one. Notice what's the difference here? What is there a lot of on all of these resume formats? White space. Now, how many of you don't have a way to raise your hand here, but how many of you, think about it, have ever gone into the margins on a document and you've decreased the margins to fit more information on the page? That is not normal. Okay, what does the majority of the population do? What are your friends that you went to undergrad with who never did any other schooling afterwards? What do they do when they had a 5-page essay? They increased the margins. They went from single spacing to double spacing, so they didn't have to write as much, whereas you're going from 1.5 spacing to like 0.5 to fit more. Okay, you have to know thyself. The people that increased the margins and went from 1 spacing to 2 spacing, your friends in undergrad, they're the ones hiring you now. They're the hiring managers. They're in human resources. They don't like reading. Don't believe me? Look at the statistics on how many people actually read a book after high school. Why am I telling you this? Because you have to step out of what you want, what you're used to, your academic mindset, into the shoes of the employer who's hiring you, and make sure it's easy to skim. What's also not on here is a works cited section. If you have a works cited section on your resume or your CV, you will not get hired in industry. It takes up too much space. There's no gatekeeper, right? The hiring manager or recruiter without a PhD that's thinking, what's the volume and issue number of every publication that they've ever done? Instead, and I'm going to show you this next, you want to put it in your professional summary. You'd say, resulting in 3 publications, including a Nature publication. If they ask you later on in the interview process for a complete works cited list, and they will if they're interested, you can provide that. You do not put that on your industry CV anymore. Okay, so you're more likely to get a job as the economy starts to reopen, right? We're seeing this big rebound. If anything, there's a high demand for PhDs right now. If you use certain transferable skill keywords or buzzwords, if you've ever heard that, that just means industry-specific words that are more of the foundational skills that give rise to these niche technical skills. If you have quantified results, if you avoid these kind of corporate speak, overused phrases, team player, et cetera, and if you avoid using academic job titles. So our friends at TalentWorks have done studies on this, and I just want to show you a few of them. Using concrete numbers increases your hireability by 40%. Hireability in this study was your odds of getting a phone screen. So after submitting a resume, your odds of getting a phone screen go up by 40% if you use concrete numbers, so quantified results, as evidenced by 3 publications, right? As demonstrated by achieving XYZ amount of grant funding, right? If you're thinking you don't have any results, you do. Discoveries can be results. For example, I'll show you this, but this is crucial. It's not so much what the result is, but the fact that you've learned to speak in terms of results. Buzzwords or keywords. The study called it buzzwords, but it's really what we would call keywords, transferable skills that are relevant to the industry, the skills that are on the job posting. Using those skills increased your hireability by 29%. This one surprises a lot of people. Being a team player, right? If you use corporate speak like team player, if you have enthusiastic on your resume 4 times, probably more of a problem in America than the UK. But there are certain words like this that we use over and over again. We don't even realize we're using it. We hear these power verbs, right? These power verbs or adjectives are not going to get you hired. In fact, they can cause problems. And there's this myth in academia that as PhDs, we're too autonomous. Right now, more than ever, employers want to hire people who can work autonomously, especially if remote work is going to be involved. They don't want somebody who's going to be a team player. We all know what that means, right? That's the person that was in our little lab group that did none of the work, but they were a team player. Employers know this too, right? So lean into the fact that you can complete projects on your own, that you can work autonomously, but also cross-functionally, cross-departmentally. Those are the phrases they want to hear instead. Most of us have PhDs, we never think about when. When is the best time for the audience, the employer, to receive the resume? Not when is the best time for you, right? When you're the most motivated after your PI, was disrespectful to you and you just thought about applying a job to make yourself feel better. That's good for you, right? But it's Friday evening, not good for an employer. The best time, and the data shows this, to apply is on a Monday. So think about this. Why would that be the best time? Because the hiring managers, they're people. They come in to their jobs on Monday, the most motivated. They don't work on the weekends, right? They have a very set schedule. They come in, they have their stack of resumes, the positions that they have to fill for. They start going through their resumes on Monday. They mark all the resumes that they like, and then they start making phone calls. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're looking at far less resumes. Mondays. So apply early Mondays. You can set all this up. You can set a Google alert. Go to google.com/alerts. Put in an alert for every job title you're interested in, every company you want to work for. You'll be the first to know when a job opens. And then you can have your resume ready and targeted and then submit it with one of these, Gmail or Outlook apps that allows you to schedule an email in advance. Work smart, not hard in your job search. Now, what do you put on the resume? There's 3 building blocks. Now, these building blocks can be used on your LinkedIn profile as well. There's 3 things employers want to see. The most important thing that they want to see: Lots of studies and surveys have been done. A very large one was done by Forbes recently, asking top employers in STEM what they wanted to see. What was the number one thing they wanted to see? And the number one thing that PhDs lacked, anybody with postgraduate education lacked, transferable skills. The number one reason that PhDs and job candidates in general get let go during the probationary period after being hired to is a lack of transferable skills. Some people call these interpersonal skills, soft skills, et cetera. They're transferable because they're the same skills that you're using right now in academia that can be readily used in industry. The problem is the skills sound too simple, and we pride ourselves as academics on our complex sounding skills. We think you probably have gone through a job posting and your eyes immediately go to all the complex technical skills that are on the job posting. And you start telling yourself, oh, I don't have these skills. I probably can't get this job. I'm not even going to target my resume and go through that work and apply. You talk yourself out of it. We think in terms of technical skills, we have a strong negativity bias as PhDs. You have to turn that off. In a job search in general, I'll talk more about this. You have to have confirmation bias for yourself. Yes, avoid confirmation bias in your work with data, information, et cetera. But in your job search, you have to confirm that you're the best candidate for the job. And you have to speak their language with transferable skills. There's 3 types of transferable skills, and I'll talk about these: people-oriented, self-oriented, and systems-oriented. Every bullet point should start with the transferable skill. This is a game changer. Immediately, you'll see more results with your resume if you do this. Every bullet point has to end with a quantified result. They just care about results. I'm guessing just about all of you, if you have a resume, if you have an industry CV, you have 10 years of experience in XYZ. This is what every PhD does. 15 years of experience in cell therapy, cell biology, whatever it is. Employers, I've sat on these committees, they laugh at this. They're like, oh, 15 years of experience, great. What have you achieved? And then the resume goes on to not even list one single result. It's just number of years of experience, all these skills, never achieved anything. That's how the employers see it. And then you want to sandwich them together with your technical expertise. So what does this look like? This is a simple example, right? Leadership skills and experience managing research professionals on collaborative projects, resulting in 8 publications and $250,000 in lab grant funding. Now, I'll talk about the results here. You do have results. I'm going to go through those in a second, but I want you to understand these transferable skills. Most of you likely do not even have research or analysis on your resume, but these are the skills that give rise to everything else. And they're very valuable skills. Employers are looking for them. Not having these transferable skills on your resume is a red flag to not hire you, because A, you can't speak the language of industry, right? And B, they're scanning your resume to see these words that they're getting, that they understand. Again, going back to my example, they're not scanning to look for HPLC, they're scanning to look for research analysis. McKinsey and Company just released a huge report saying there's a 20% deficit in the job market for people who can do research and analysis. Innovation, right? Those are 3 that all of you have as PhDs. Advanced comprehension, speed of learning, information processing. You can comprehend things very quickly. And this is something that'll hold you back in your job search, by the way, because you'll sit on a webinar like this and you're like, I can understand this, right? Not just because I'm a good teacher, right? But because you have a PhD. So you comprehend all of this very quickly. And you're thinking, oh, this is easy. I get this. No problem. I know exactly what to do. And then you don't do anything, right? You wait years and you end up unemployed and you wonder what happened. Because your ability to comprehend things quickly gives you a false sense of confidence that you can handle whatever comes up when the time comes and you're above the process. The problem is you don't know what you don't know, right? So everything that I'm teaching you, there's a whole world of an industry job search that you don't know about. Sure, once somebody says, hey, you have to go learn about this, as a PhD, you can go find that information, learn it, right? Leverage it to get hired. But there's a whole world of information you don't even know that you don't know until somebody comes along and says, hey, you're not doing this right, or this, or this, or this. So you're violating all these social norms in industry, and you don't even realize it. So it takes a little bit of humility to be like, oh, there's a whole process here, a whole world here that I don't know about, but also courage to start on that process, to start at the bottom of that mountain, just like you started at the bottom of the academic mountain one time long ago, and start climbing. So 3 types of transferable skills. These are what employers are looking for today. These are new. I've updated these since the pandemic, since everything's happened. There's been some changes, right? Like flexibility and versatility is highly valued right now. Performance management. You've had to manage your own performance, right? Are there any metrics that you're using right now to manage your performance or your results on investment for experiments, for example? Very likely. Maybe you have to measure how much media you're using for an experiment, right? For a positive result, things like that. Performance management. Change management. Have you had to adapt to change in the last 18 months? I'm guessing yes. Have you had to manage change? Yes. Personnel development and virtual training. Cross-functional collaboration, especially virtual collaboration. Project management, task delegation, chain of communication. All of you have these transferable skills. You're just not listing them. You should have a few people-oriented transferable skills as well as a few systems-oriented transferable skills on your resume, and then some self-oriented too. Managing risk, mitigating risk. Important today? Absolutely. Systemization. This is the industry term. We use protocols, methodologies, lesson plans. Those are systems, highly valuable in industry. They allow businesses to scale. Return on investments, financial acumen, regulatory. You've had to, get things done with a budget near zero in academia. That's financial acumen. Regulatory acumen. You've had to take a bloodborne pathogens quiz or exam. You've had to manage regulations in the lab. Regulatory acumen. These are just the industry words that are used, the broader skills. Now, a lot of PhDs, we learn not to talk about ourselves in academia as much. We use more passive language. Again, we even avoid confirmation bias. We'll talk. I've seen PhDs sit in interviews and talk the employer out of hiring them. They'll say, do you have XYZ skill? And they'll go on, no, I don't have this skill. I never had a chance to learn it. I'm not really sure how it works. It's complex. No. Okay. Instead, when you're interviewing, I've learned these similar skills and can quickly learn that skill because my comprehension is at a much higher level given my education background. If you can imagine yourself talking like that, then it's going to be very hard for you to get an industry job. You're pitching yourself to some extent, and you can do it in a way that you're comfortable with, but you have to be okay saying, I may not know how to do this yet, but I can learn how to do it. This is what all of your PhD training has been about. You've sat in front of your thesis committee and they've grilled you until you finally were able to say, I don't know, but here's how I would learn. Employers are looking for that in a slightly different way. Work ethic, initiative. Don't just assume that they think that you work hard. Tell them that you work hard. They love to see that. Initiative, technical communication, technical literacy. This is a great all-encompassing way to say, hey, when you hire me, you're getting somebody who can understand complex technical writing, who can write complex technical writing, who can edit it, understand it. Writing is incredibly valuable. We've seen this. Remote work has made writing even more valuable. Completeness, autonomy, stress management. Who's had to manage stress in academia, right? All of us. Very valuable skill. Quantified results. Number of publications. Number of presentations. Number of collaborations. Number of optimized or innovative methodologies. These are systems. Number of discoveries. Numbers of patents, grant funding. You've made discoveries. Even negative data is a discovery. You've optimized, you've innovated protocols, right? These are systems. Again, you've set up cross-functional collaborations, had some type of presentation. All of those are quantified results. A number of figures you've created, a number of reports. All of these are relevant. Number of people that you've mentored or TA'd. All of these are valuable. Okay, number 2, improve your personal brand or LinkedIn and make your profile visible. So you can apply a lot of what I just told you about your resume to LinkedIn, but we're going to go through some specifics here. So this came out recently, this data from Statista, very telling. And I have to agree, from our internal data, we see the same thing. If you have a LinkedIn profile that has a picture, maybe it's your graduate student picture, like with a tree in the background, or your friend cropped out, no banner image, no headline that makes any sense other than just graduate student at XYZ University. I know a lot of you have that right now as your LinkedIn headline. The rest of your profile, it's kind of spotty. You have a few things added, not all the sections completed. You might as well not have a LinkedIn profile at all when it comes to your job search, right? You can see that in the data. No LinkedIn profile versus this bare bones profile. But if you complete your profile, LinkedIn gives you a huge boost. Who pays LinkedIn? Employers pay LinkedIn. They're not making any money, very little, from job candidates. So they want to keep employers happy. How do they do this? They make sure that they only show profiles to employers of people who are serious about their job search. One of the ways, and one of the most important ways that LinkedIn can tell if you're serious about your job search is if your LinkedIn profile is complete. It's all in the data. It's all in their algorithm. Whoever has the most complete profile and who's ever constantly updating their profile is the most likely to be serious about getting a job now and not just dabbling in their job search. So LinkedIn will show the people with these profiles to more employers. Red flags, right? Incomplete profile. I showed that the headline, that's academic. Few connections. Connect to as many people as you can. You can always unconnect with them. LinkedIn does a good job making sure there's very few bots, et cetera, on their platform. Connect. Professional profile, anything out of date, get rid of. You want to update. LinkedIn's added a lot of new features. Take advantage of these new features. So number of viewers, avoiding those red flags, facilitating connections. These will all increase your visibility, demonstrating professional awareness. I'll talk more about this. Obviously, increasing your visibility is one of these factors. Attracting recruiters, building a strong personal brand. Does your LinkedIn profile tell a story, a unified story of who you are, how everything you've done in the past has trained you for these one or two positions? That you want to exit academia and not go back. Not that you're just dabbling in the industry job search. Are you networking? Are you working to get referrals? Are you reaching out by mail? This is all in LinkedIn's algorithm. The more activity, the more splashing around, it's called in LinkedIn speak on LinkedIn, the higher you show up in the search results. So again, if you have a PhD or about to have a PhD and you're not getting contacted on a weekly basis by recruiters, there is a problem, especially in this job market. Okay, so number one, turn on your recruiter button if you haven't. This little dashed box, click that box. It'll open up this. You can choose for only recruiters to see that you're looking for a job. So if you're worried about your PI, right? Then put in the job titles you're interested in and the locations you want to work. Otherwise, you're not even showing up on LinkedIn Recruiter, right? So you can choose only recruiters. Then look up your SSI score. You don't even know what your SSI score is, I'm guessing. So if you just Google LinkedIn SSI score, your social selling index, don't get confused by this title. It's a metric that's visible to you that correlates very well with a metric that LinkedIn uses on how high to show you in the search results to employers in terms of the visibility on LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn Talent. You can see what the four major factors are. I think I have an image here. Establish your professional brand. Is there a unified story? Is there keyword connectedness all around a data scientist role or an R&D scientist role, right? A principal scientist or whatever the role is you want to get into. Is there a lot of keywords relevant to that, or is it all over the place in terms of your experience? Engage with insights. Go to the news feed, like people's posts, comment, interact with people. Connect with people in a specific industry. You want to get into the biotechnology industry in XYZ sector, connect with people in that sector. And then build the relationships. LinkedIn knows if you're just connecting or if you've gone further and networked, if you actually have some back and forth with people, either on the news feed with them openly or in direct messages. You have to get active on LinkedIn. It's not just you can't just make a few updates to your profile and poof, everybody's flooding to your profile. Please add a picture if you haven't. Okay, this is not so much a problem today, but this is somebody who joined our Cheeky Scientist Association, and they came in and said, Isaiah, nobody's responding to my LinkedIn profile. I added a banner pic. Let's see your profile. No picture. I'm like, okay, well, that's why you have no responses. You can't get away with this anymore. So I said, add a picture, make it a professional picture. This is the picture they added. Now, I'm guessing there's some awkward laughter going on in your head. What's the problem here? And this is no different than those of you that have a picture of you in your lab coat, okay, or in front of a library bookcase or sitting at a computer in your classroom. Shows you as a student. You need a corporate headshot. Every industry company that I went and worked for, one of the first things I did was get a corporate headshot. They had a whole department in many of these companies for taking corporate headshots. So I said, get a corporate headshot, go down to a local photography store. I mean, for like, I don't know, 20 pounds, you can get 3 pictures that are professional enough and they'll last you 5 years. You can have a friend do it too. Just make sure the lighting is good. This was the picture they came up with, and they started getting many responses and have since been hired. Now, a lot of you are thinking, oh, wow, this person reached out to me. I would connect with them because it's a professional picture. Whatever you would wear to an interview for you, that's what you want to wear for your professional picture. have a banner image that's relevant to where you want to work or is relevant to the field you want to get into, something symbolic of it. Don't just leave it with that blank blue background. Photo matters. Be smiling. If you wear glasses, make sure you can see your eyes behind the glasses. Professional picture. Make sure there's nothing distracting in the background. Then your headline. Try to answer a few questions that they're going to have for you immediately in the headline, like who are you professionally? So technical skills and transferable skills. If you go to LinkedIn Recruiter, again, hiring managers, recruiters, do they like doing research like you do? Do they get lost in some random thread of research for an hour like you do? Like you all of a sudden got interested in something and so you Googled it for an hour and went to the next page, and then you went to Google Scholar, and then you went to the references at the back of the references and the back of those references on PubMed, Scholar, and then you're in the library looking up, references in actual books. Okay, that nobody else does that. That's only us PhDs. So on LinkedIn Recruiter, if you look at their interface, it's just location, job title, skills. That's all they're searching. Location, job title, skills. If you don't have location, job title, and skills in your headline, you're never going to be found. 80% of the keyword strength on LinkedIn is in the LinkedIn headline. So there's technical skills or transferable skills that are important for the job. Add that hobby again, something that personalizes you. You'll see a lot of people do this at the end of their headline. You're into arts and crafts, right? Again, hiking if you can't think of anything else, a sport, a hobby, something that is shows that you're well-rounded, humanizes you. Do not put something that further pigeonholes you, let's say is, somebody less well-rounded, right? Don't put what did I have people? Gaming, don't put gaming, okay? Nothing wrong with gaming. Just for a PhD, it might show that you're more one-dimensional than well-rounded. Don't put that you're into, GOT novels. I've seen all of this. Don't do this. Dungeons and Dragons. Don't do this. Okay. Something that shows that you're well-rounded, that you get outside of the lab. You go outside, ideally, right? Hiring managers and recruiters, something they can, it reduces risk for them. What do you want professionally? Job titles of choice. You have to have the job titles there. This is not your experience section. It's your headline where you post a flag saying, I want these jobs. And then where do you want to work, right? Are you willing to relocate? Put willing to relocate in your headline. Just a quick snapshot of some headlines that got PhDs hired, right? You can see just instantly. And they're spending 5 to 7 seconds on both your resume and your LinkedIn profile, not very long. So it's got to instantly show industry professional. This is the about section, and this is how I would like your about section to look. It needs to be in the first person. It starts with I am so-and-so. Okay, and then it is broken apart, so there's lots of white space, easy to skim, some bullet points of your skills. At the very bottom, it's not here, and I've worked with Geeta since this, a way to contact you that doesn't require the employer to use one of their in-mail messages that cost money. If you put your email at the bottom of this, say, please contact me here, and then your email, you're much more likely to get a response from an employer because they don't have to think, should I use one of my 40 in-mails that they have? They have to pay for these in-mails on LinkedIn to reach out to candidates. All right, very important to understand. So first person, I am so-and-so. Everything that I've done has prepared me for a role in XYZ. Here's my skills, technical skills, transferable skills, other capabilities. And then here's how to contact me for free. I can take more questions on this at the end. A lot of different sections to fill out on LinkedIn. Fill out all of them, as many as you can. Right? If you don't have any patents, okay, you don't have to fill out patents, but any online courses you've taken, organizations you belong to, education, volunteer. This in particular, a lot of employers are going to because it's a great way to find out about what you really care about, who you really are. Do you have any volunteer experience? Put details to add bullet points. What do you care about? What have you done for these organizations? What results have you achieved for these volunteer organizations? Now, the last part of both your resume and your LinkedIn profile is targeting them to an individual job, which means you have to go to an individual job post like this, read through it, highlight the skills, right? The key words, which are the technical skills, transferable skills, the job title too. Highlight those. This is one example. This is another example. Create a list. Take the top 5, 10, 15 keywords and put them in your resume and then throughout your LinkedIn profile. Now, a couple of problems. This can take forever, number one. So I have a hack for you. We invented this hack. a cheeky scientist. I'm going to tell you what it is, save you a lot of time. And it's especially important for LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn, it's not, your resume, it's one resume targeted for one individual position. On LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile has to appeal to all employers for one or two key positions, so that it's more broad in scope. So you'd have to go through 10 different job postings, 20 different job postings for the one job title you're interested in at the most, and then 10 or 20 more for the second job title you're interested in. How do you do that quickly? Use a word cloud. Just Google free word cloud. There's word cloud, wordclouds.com, wordle.com, and you can copy and paste 10,000 words of text from 20 job postings, put it into a word cloud. It'll show you with the size of the words, which skills, which keywords are used the most. Now you just hacked LinkedIn's algorithm and the applicant tracking system software algorithm. Right? Sometimes, like this is showing here, there can be words that are used in both, but you'll see the differences, right? Python versus KOL, which is key opinion leader. Time management, data visualization. You'll get a lot of insights by doing this. You want to approach it quantitatively with the word cloud, and qualitatively by reading the job posting too, because sometimes there's something that's only mentioned once, but there's a sentence that says, oh, and this is really important, but they only mention it once. You would need to understand that qualitatively. Asking for job search referrals from your connections, moving from connecting to networking. So this is what most of us do as PhDs. We spend all of our time surfing LinkedIn, other social media, maybe ResearchGate for jobs. Right? Very little time is spent following up with these individuals, let alone connecting with people in smaller groups or associations, or meeting people face to face. Obviously, this is coming back more now. You have to flip this around. Most of your time should be spent following up and building the professional relationship. Very little time should be spent on the connection. You connect, but then you got to take the professional relationship deeper, because industry, the PhD employment in industry is very small. Only 1.6% of the population has a PhD to begin with. In industry, in PhD level jobs, it's 0.05% of the population. Small group of people are at the level you're trying to get into. So you want to build long-term professional relationships. These relationships are an end in themselves. They're not a means to an end. I've had people that I knew years ago, almost a decade ago, come back and do things professionally with me. You never know. I've had people that I've met, and then 3 years ago, they got me a job. Like somebody I met from Germany 3 years ago got me the job at Miltini Biotech, 3 years later after I met them. Just as an example, different countries, things like that can happen. It's kind of an art. So you want to build these professional relationships throughout your career and see them again as an end in themselves, something to continue to invest in. And the data is there too. 60% of all hires at top firms are from referrals now. Nobody wants to hire you into a $91,000 a year position based on what you said about yourself on your resume alone. They want somebody else at that company to say, yeah, I spoke to this person, they're normal. We talk to a lot of industry employers about the red flags, specifically for PhDs that they look to avoid. Genentech, Novartis, Roche, Takeda, the 3 red flags we've identified. And this is actually verbatim what was said from a recruiter from Genentech recently. Defensiveness, like if you start getting defensive about your work or lack of industry experience, defensiveness in general means you can't handle stress well. You see this in other PhDs in academia all the time. Arrogance. Have you ever met a PhD who came across as arrogant? Now, it's not that they're actually arrogant, but you can come across as arrogant if you're not open to learning. You should be approaching your job search, the entire process, as an eager student, not as somebody who's posturing, trying to prove that you know what you're talking about, trying to fake that you have industry experience. That's what most of us do and why most of us stress out. But if you just approached it as an eager student, it'd be easier. And the last one is awkwardness. Right? You have to have it's called professional awareness. You're talking to somebody, their body language is turned away from you. They don't want to talk to you. Can you understand that? You're talking too fast or too slow for your audience. Are you sensitive to that? Do you understand during an interview that you need to change pace? Do they not understand what you're saying? Are you professionally aware enough to stop and say, does that answer your question? Or do you keep rambling on? Here's the key. You can get ahead of 93% of the competition in industry just by getting a referral. Employers get this data. number one source of hiring volume, number one source of hiring quality, fastest way to hire a candidate, number one employment length. This is crucial. The gold standard metric for success of somebody working in HR is the 2-year retention rate. That 2-year retention rate goes dramatically up through a referral than just hiring online, which is why you see data like this, right? Source of job offers, 60.7% through research and networking, only 3.6% through your favorite, very likely, an internet job search. So here's a simple job search. Here's a simple way to get connected to people. I'm going to show you step by step. All right, we probably got about 15 minutes or so left of the presentation before Q&A, maybe 20. Search for something else other than just top PhD jobs. You'll get the same 10 companies everybody's heard of: Amazon, Apple, right, et cetera. Instead, try searching for small biotechs in your case, London, right, or the greater London area. Mid-sized, right? Small in industry is 100 to 1,000 employees, right? That's the industry mindset, not the academic mindset where small is like one lab of like 1 to 5 people. Mid-size is 1,000 to several thousand. Okay, so small biotechs in Boston, mid-sized biotechs in Boston, in London or the greater London area. I did this just as an example. I chose the second link to do it randomly. And what I found was a list of companies I had never heard of. If you do this for London right now, you'll see a ton, or the greater London area or all of the UK, you'll see thousands, if not millions, seriously millions of companies you've never heard of. Because a lot of them are 100 to 1,000 employees. And here's the key: even if you go work for a huge company like Pfizer, they're not going to have all 100,000 people in one building. Okay, they're going to be spread out globally. So I chose the second one here to be random again, Ocular Therapeutics. I'd never heard of it. You take that name, right? So these aggregate lists are already done for you on Google. Just search, right? Or DuckDuckGo or whatever you use, and you'll find these aggregate lists. Then copy and paste the companies you find into LinkedIn. 96% of companies have a LinkedIn page. And they show you all of the employees working at that company. It's just delivered to you. Here you go. Here's people to contact. You see everybody working at that company. Start reaching out to connect. Now, LinkedIn will throttle you. There's a certain number of people you can reach out to every day, but you can get premium for $30 a month, which I recommend once you're in the heart of your job search, and you can reach out to about as many as you can do during a day. Let's say you want to get into an R&D position. Who would you reach out to here? Not the chairman, the director, right? So it'll take forever to hear back. Reach out to David Snook, an analytical chemist too, likely a PhD. Now, the more you connect with other people, and this is a big thing we do in the Cheeky Scientist Association, the broader of an industry network you'll have. So when you reach out to David on your own, if you cold contact him, you'll have to reach out 3 to 4 times on average is what we see before you get a response. And you should reach out. Most of you reach out once, you never reach out again. Reach out once, a week later, reach out, a week later, reach out. And then that 3rd or 4th time, they'll see the name come up in their inbox and they'll say, I got to look at this. And as long as it doesn't have anything passive aggressive, like just seeing if you got my last message, then they will respond to you. There's a faster way to do it though. The more you build your network, you'll have more shared connections. And then you can click on those shared connections. And this is the picture I showed you before, happened randomly the first time I did this. So you can reach out to Dane and say, hi, Dane, we're connected already because of XYZ. I see you're connected to David Snook. I'd love to talk to him, to ask him 2 quick questions about how he got hired at Ocular Therapeutics and what he enjoys about it. Would you be up for introducing us? Dane introduces you, and now you can jump right into an informational interview with David. Now, this is one of my favorite charts that we have, and it just shows the different sticking points and the different phases of going from connecting to following up and building the professional relationship. A lot of people get stuck at getting a reply. So what I recommend is shortening your scripts and making your networking scripts about the other person. I'm going to show you some examples in a second. Just as many people, though, they go from that first level problem of can't get a reply to getting a reply, and then they don't know what to say next. Or it gets awkward because they stay at the same level of professional intimacy. Hey, how are you? I'm doing well. How are you? I'm doing well. How are you? Right? You don't know what to say back. So you'll get a response finally from somebody on LinkedIn for your job search, and you don't know what to say next. So you'll wait an hour, a day, and now their green light is turned off on LinkedIn. They're not responding to you. It's your job to take it to deeper levels of professional intimacy, and they want you to. People get awkward if you don't go deeper. So by deeper, I mean, I'm doing well, thank you so much. Congratulations on your new position at XYZ company. What are you the most excited about currently in this new role? Oh, it's about me. I love talking about me, just like everybody, right? They want to talk about their job, their role, their work. That's all they're thinking about. My most challenging role is XYZ. Thanks for asking. Absolutely. That's really interesting. I bet there's a lot of challenges with that. What would you say is the most challenging aspect? Like what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge in terms of getting that done? Right. So now you're going to another level deeper where you're asking about the challenges, right? And they'll tell you about the challenges. And then you'll find yourself in this blue portion. You're actually in the informational interview. So you'll slowly go into this informational interview phase through deeper levels of professional intimacy. And ideally, you'll be able to elevate the technology at the same time, from chatting on LinkedIn to maybe talking by email to maybe even talking on the phone and just saying, I'd love to talk more about this. I don't want to keep bothering you on chat here. I'm going to be making calls tomorrow, right? Don't make it like some big formal, can I call you? Can I have an informational interview with you? I'm going to be making calls tomorrow, right? Lower the barrier to entry for them, make it less intense, less weird. Can I give you a call and just ask you 2 quick questions about how you got hired into this role or how you got this promotion and what you enjoy about it? Sure, yeah, give me a call tomorrow. Here's my number. Because talking is normal in industry. Networking is the currency of industry. So that's what the phases look like. So getting into that, out of that green box into the yellow box, you have to take your networking script away from this kind of script that a lot of PhDs send out. Hi, I am so-and-so. I have these skills. I. Please help me get a job. Most of you won't start sending these scripts until you're desperately looking for a job because you're about to be unemployed after defending your thesis or losing your postdoc funding. And so you'll desperately reach out like this. I need a job. I'm so-and-so. I have all these skills. Please help me get a job. Here's my resume. Please see it. Don't do this. Start networking early. Scripts like this. I came across your article. I'm impressed with your work. Keep up the great work that you are doing. You, and ask a simple yes, no question at the end, and you'll get a response. Make it about them. Get into a LinkedIn network that they're in. Look at the influencers they follow, their interests. Bring that up. Guess what? Newsflash, if it's on their LinkedIn profile, they want people to pay attention to it. But please, somebody appreciate the work that I've done. And then you're never going to ask somebody to help you get hired. That's like going up to a stranger and saying, hey, can you help me move my flat this weekend? See, I know it's called a flat in the UK. Instead, you want to say, hey, I'm moving and I heard that you moved recently. Do you have any advice for me on moving? Just about everybody will say, yeah, here's my advice. Don't save the refrigerator and the washer and dryer for the end. Do that first, whatever, right? You're elevating their credibility. You're asking about their experience. You're not asking them to do the hard work for you. And I'm going to break all of this down in terms of how an informational interview actually looks in a second. There's a lot of way to add value. We always talk about AVF, add value first. Don't ask for something until you've shown appreciation as a colleague, complimented their work, congratulated their career progress. Ask them for their personal opinion, ask for their advice, make a recommendation. Oh, I see you're following Richard Branson. Did you see his new book? Here's a link in case you want to check out the back cover. Introduce them. If there's somebody you don't know well that you want to get to know better, introduce them to somebody you do know well, find a unique thread they have in common. This elevates you as a super connector. So easy to do. No, everybody knows that networking is important, but nobody has time for it. So when you offer 2 people to connect them to each other, they always say, yeah, yes, please connect us. Really appreciate it. Now you can come back to either of them in a week or so and ask for an introduction to somebody else. Or you can just come back to get to know the person you didn't know well better. Okay, conduct informational interviews with potential coworkers. Number 4. So these informational interviews, what do they look like? First of all, lower the intensity. As PhDs, we get so serious about these interviews. We have a legal pad of questions. We want to go through every question. If they go off on a tangent, we're like, yeah, that's great. I want to come back to my questions. The whole point of an informational interview is to get them comfortable with you. Ideally, it should be 25 minutes, 45 minutes of them talking about themselves, their work. And then they finally turn to you and say, well, enough about me. What about you? And you deliver a quick elevator pitch of your interests. Ask them if there's anybody else they could connect you to that you can learn more about the company from. I'm going to go through this in detail, but I just want to tell you, don't be a lawyer. You're just a journalist, a casual journalist asking about preparation, right? How did they learn about and get the position? Their current fit, what are their current responsibilities? Future fit, what is their career trajectory? Where are they headed? You will get people talking forever about this because that's all they're thinking about. Company fit, what's the company culture like, lifestyle? Make it about them though. Don't ask a question of what is the most important thing going on in this field right now? Too intense. You want them to tell you what the most important thing is? No. What do you think is the most important thing going on in the field right now? Or what's the most important thing in the field going on right now for you? Ask them about what they're an expert in themselves. If you start asking them these objective questions, you're putting them on the spot. It's like you want them to bring up some data or publications. Don't do that. That's not what an informational interview is about. There's 3 phases of an informational interview: the beginning, the middle, and the end. I'm going to break this down into 4 levels of professional intimacy next, but this will just help you understand that at the beginning, it's very topical questions, casual. You don't get too intimate too quickly. You don't sit down with somebody and say, well, why did you want to get into this position? Too intense. Likewise, you don't say, do you work on the weekends? You started the conversation like that, and some PhDs do this. It's awkward, it's intense. You can't skip levels of professional intimacy. How did you get into this role? Then you start asking, what's it like to work here? Do you have to work on the weekends? Because you're assessing the company fit for you as well. And then you ask for specific things at the end, and this is normal to do when you sit down, you elevate somebody else's credibility, they talk for a while. They'll come up, at the end, they'll ask you, is there anything I can do for you? Any questions you have for me? Well, is there anyone else at the company I should talk with? What advice? This is a great one. This is like Inception. Then they'll give you advice on how to get hired at their company. What advice would you give to someone in my position? How would you describe a successful employee here? They're telling you how you can get hired and be a successful employee and job candidate. Okay, so 4 levels of professional intimacy. The first is personal, not personal as in like too personal, but personal is just topical, what you would ask somebody, on the tube, right, when you're sitting next to them. What is it like to work in this career? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? How did you get started doing this type of work? What parts of the job do you find the most enjoyable? Very easy, right? Very just casual. Then you go a bit deeper into the qualifications of the role, right? What education, skills, and experience are needed for this role? Oh, interesting. What parts of the job do you find the most challenging? Are you going a little bit deeper in terms of professional intimacy? Now you're getting to the landscape, the 3rd level. What's the career trajectory look like? What are the opportunities in this career path? Right, you're slowly going to the opportunities, the job, the role, how you get hired. Why do people leave this field? How is the company changing the overall industry, right? Just deeper questions, more broader in scope. And then finally, you have to get to these questions. You have to ask these at the end. You don't do an hour sit down with somebody in an informational interview and not at least ask them, hey, could you pass on my resume to the hiring manager in case a position opens up here that I'm a good fit for? Is there anyone else you could connect me with? I talked about that one. Could I mention your name and that we had this conversation on a cover letter for a job opening here? This, at the very least, ask them this, what positions might be available here in the future? Learn about which positions might be opening up, because they learn internally about jobs coming up months in advance before they're even posted. Is there anything else you think I should know? Another great question. All right, preparing for your virtual job interview. I have to talk about job interviewing. Here are some of the questions we see PhDs getting the most right now. Why do you want to leave academia? You will get this question. They want to assess your confidence level, your commitment to going into industry. And overall, I would say the biggest area that PhDs fail the interview process in is showing commitment to the job at hand. We're taught in academia to be very exploratory, to be non-committal, to avoid confirmation bias. This is the exact same thing that'll ensure another job candidate gets hired over you. They'll test you with this. Why do you want to leave academia? Would you be open to another position here? You're thinking, oh, I should agree. Yes, I would be because I want to work here. They're testing your resolve for the position at hand. What do you know about our company? You have to have deep knowledge of the company. If you hear that you're getting an interview, you have to go into extreme information consumption mode on that company. Know everything. Bring up as many details as you can. Ask questions. Know what merger and know the business acumen side of the business. What mergers and acquisitions are happening. Search press releases, Pfizer, press releases, Amazon, whatever company you're applying to. Find what they're pushing out, what they want people to know. You have to be extremely knowledgeable. Read everything on their website that you can. This is an area you can win in as a PhD with your research background. This is very common, this line of questioning. How do you prioritize your work? Do you work well autonomously? What's your morning routine? We see that a lot, especially for people who have to work remotely or may have to work remotely. Can you get things done on your own? If you're given this set of priorities and your manager comes in and changes them, how would you respond? That's more of a behavioral question, a challenging question. They'll see how you cope with stress. Other questions, what are your salary expectations? Any reasonable offer will be considered. Or even better, I'm not really concerned with salary right now. I'm more concerned about the team I'll be working with and the skills that I'll be gaining. It's a good one, right? What do you do in your free time? Right? They want to understand that you have where you can balance your stress, really. It's not just work-life balance, whatever that is for a PhD, but that you can balance your stress levels. You can make sure that you decompress as needed. You can cope with stress and get things done. Why our company? You're going to get rationale-based questions, and there's no excuse for you as a PhD not to nail these rationale-based questions. Why do you want to work at our company? Why should we hire you over somebody else? You have to build a case for two things. Why you want this job over any other company at this this over any other position, and why you want this company over any other company, and then why they should hire you over anybody else. You have to have extreme confirmation bias. You have to say that company's your number one choice for XYZ reason. Every company wins in some area. There's pros and cons to every company. So find out where that company wins, what you are aligned with, and build a case. Like you are arguing a case on why you are the best candidate for the job. With high levels of engagement, people always balk at me when I say enthusiasm, right? Because it seems too rah-rah. Not then engagement. You have to be energized and engaged in the role. You have to, be nodding, be excited for the role. If you're not even excited, you're acting too cool, right, for the job. You're acting like you're above it, or you're posturing. You're not really interested in it on day one. What do they think it's going to be like to work with you 3 months later? If you're not even excited about the role on day one, are you going to be excited about it 3 months later? A few more. Why should we not hire you? This is one of the new kind of gotcha questions. This is, you want to take the higher ground here. If you weren't able to live up to my expectations in terms of your company's mission, which is XYZ, because you memorized it, and values, then it would be best for you not to hire me. But I can't imagine that happening. Another good one, right? Give me an example of when you had to work in a team. So when have you had to work cross-functionally, cross-departmentally, and try to use that language? I've had to work cross-departmentally to get XYZ done. What they want to know is, how do you get things done with people you have no authority over? That's what cross-functionally means, cross-departmentally. There's a lot of different questions that you can be asked. These are all actual questions that PhDs in our association were asked in the last couple of months, just showing you very, very quickly the variety. And I can send these to all of you as well. I think I have a way that I can do that at the end here. Why am I showing you all of these so quickly? Because I don't want you to memorize answers to questions, okay? That's what we did in primary school. Don't do that. Instead, learn the methodology for answering any question correctly. This involves learning the question types, right? And the framework for answering any question. There's 4 types of questions you'll be asked. Let's say it's a 45-minute interview. You might have many of these on a site visit. The first are just going to be credibility questions. You said this on your resume. Can you tell me more about it? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? 2 questions every employer is going to ask you at the beginning. How are you today? Just say perfect. There's actually a study on that's the best answer, by the way. Don't go into, oh, I'm nervous or whatever else. And tell me a little bit about yourself. Opinion, determine how the candidate sees themselves. That's what they want to assess here. Really, they want to assess, are you a good fit for the culture? What type of leader do you prefer to work for? What's your management style, if you've ever heard that question? So they'll spend, maybe 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here. The bulk of their time will be spent here on behavioral questions, at least 20 minutes. How you react. Can they stress you out? They don't get to hire you for 2 weeks and see what your real personality type is like. So they're going to put you under stress here. Why would you quit academia? What if we hire you and you quit here as well. Walk me through a time when you just really didn't agree with your supervisor. What did they do wrong? What they're trying to do is get you to act in a spiteful way, to see if you will act in a spiteful way, or if you'll take the higher ground and accept responsibility for everything. Well, you know, me and my PI supervisor, we definitely had challenges that we faced. I learned a lot about things that I could do better. One situation was we had to get a grant out. It was a high pressure situation. So what I did was I ended up setting up a cross functional collaboration with a lab down the hall. We shared reagents. We were able to get the data we needed, and we were able to submit the figures we needed to for the grant on time. And this was a great experience for me because I learned to ask for help sooner rather than later. And that's using the STAR methodology, which I'm going to show you next. Most PhDs only focus on competency questions, right? You have these reagents. How would you go about designing an experiment for XYZ? But they'll spend maybe 10 minutes on this, right? They just want to assess. They know you've had your training. They know you've defended your thesis. They know that you can learn how to do things, and they're not hiring you again, especially let's say for an R&D role. Do you think they're hiring you for like your hands to do an experiment? As a PhD, they can hire a technician with a bachelor's degree to pipette, as an example, or whatever you're doing with your hands that you think is valuable. Or they have advanced entire rooms, entire buildings of robotics that are doing all of it automatically. They're hiring you for your mind, your ability to manage people and manage experiments. So this is the arc that I just went through. It really turns your interview answers into a story. Situation, task, action, result. So give context. 2 years ago in the lab, 3 years ago, we were facing this challenge, right? That's the task at hand. So I took these actions to achieve this result. Remember, they care about results. And then you can talk about the lessons that you learned as well. Any question, even what's your biggest weakness, can be put into this framework. My biggest weakness in terms of the lab used to be when I first started graduate school, I was not very good at cloning. I really struggled with it. So what I had to do is stay after in the lab a little bit later when a postdoc in the lab was done with their work. I worked with them closely. They were very good at cloning. I learned their strategies, their techniques. And because of that, cloning became one of my biggest strengths. So what I learned from this is that while I will have weaknesses as they come up, if I work hard, if I collaborate with others, I can overcome those weaknesses. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for some answer like, oh, my biggest weakness is I work too hard. Come on. Okay, finally, I think this might be the last slide or one of the last slides. So 8 question types to ask employers. The number one thing that PhD level candidates, job candidates lack, a huge study was just done by Dow Chemical. The number one thing is a lack of industry understanding. Such a broad answer from these employers. These were global 500 employers. They said the lack of industry understanding was the biggest thing that PhDs lacked. So you want to show them you understand business, even topically. Ask them hierarchy. Who will you be reporting to? What does the organizational chart look like? What mergers and acquisitions are happening? We hear about only the billion-dollar mergers in the news, but there's hundreds of mergers and acquisitions going on for any company that's a global 500 company, and even dozens of mergers and acquisitions happening all the time for companies that have 100 employees to 1,000 employees. Restructuring. This is also why the job is open in the first place. Something's going on. There's a merger and acquisition, a restructuring. There's a new product or project that needs to be done. That's why they're hiring. So find out why they're hiring. Ask somebody on an informational interview before an interview. Where have others in this position gone? Where is the client base expanding? Which products are creating growth? What new products are coming out? What are the company's 5-year goals? So with that, you'll demonstrate some level of business acumen, and overall, you'll be able to get hired and get a job offer within 5 weeks. It is possible for you, no matter what your background is. So thank you all very much. I'll stay here for some Q&A with Carly. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully you learned a lot.
Wonderful. Isaiah, thank you so much. That was such insight. Oh my God. I think for me, one of the main things I took from that is that this isn't difficult in comparison to some of the stuff we're doing in the lab and coming up with experiments, solving problems. A lot of these are just formulas, or using the STAR formula or constructing a sentence, putting your transferable scale and how it's quantified. These aren't difficult things. It's just things that we've not been taught before.
Yes. Exactly right. Yeah, I think the mindset challenge is the biggest challenge. As a PhD, you can learn anything, like you can comprehend things very quickly. But what I see a lot of PhDs do is they don't execute. So we're very good. We live inside our heads too much sometimes. We'll play out scenarios. Okay, this makes sense. I can comprehend it. But if I do this, there's likely these obstacles. Maybe I shouldn't invest the energy. And we're very careful in our analysis. So we get stuck in a learning loop. We suffer from analysis paralysis because that's how we are rewarded in academia. But in industry, execution is rewarded. And if you execute on these processes as a PhD, you will get hired, and it can happen in a very short time frame.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay, let's move on to some of the questions we've had submitted from viewers. So Nora Clark from Imperial has asked a very specific question about the structuring of CVs and in format 2, when pulling out the skills and saying I gained X skill in this position. Should this be limited to one skill and one position, or can you elaborate and have multiple skills under that position? Like how detailed should you go, or should it be very specific and to the point?
Yeah, good question. I would say for every, let's say you have, I'll just say, let's say you're a postdoctoral fellow and graduate research assistant are the two work experience sections that you have. 3 bullet points or 5 bullet points a piece. Every bullet point starts with a transferable skill, ends with a quantified result, but it can be multiple quantified results. Now, as PhDs, we can be very linear thinkers. We're logicians, right? So we want to think, okay, A transferable skill plus B technical result led to C, technical skill led to C result. Don't do that. You can be more fluid here, right? So instead you could say research and analysis skills, as well as, XYZ niche technical skills, resulting in these publications or these reports, even though those 2 skills were not solely responsible for creating these reports, or there was additional skills required, or maybe these skills were barely responsible for these reports. That doesn't matter. They want to understand broadly what's connected, what skills you have, and they want to see it within this bullet point framework. And you can always explain it. If they ask you a question about your resume and your bullet points, saying like, well, why do you have these 2 results here? Or tell me about how this transferable skill and this technical skill and this result line up. You want that question. You're prepared for that question. So you can just say, well, these skills, in addition to many other skills, led to this result. Or this result was achieved really from a combination of skills across these bullet points. I wanted to put it here at the top, though, because I thought it was very important for this role. So if you're answering a question like that, you're winning in your job search.
Yeah, so you've really got to be prepared to talk about your CV as well and answer questions on that, not just put things on paper and hope that it ticks some boxes, essentially.
Correct. And again, you really are winning if that is happening because you're controlling the conversation. If they're asking you about your resume, that's what you want. But if you don't have this information on there, what they'll ask instead is, I see you have 10 years of experience, but what have you achieved in that time? Now you're drawing a blank because it's such a broad scope question. It could be anything, and that's where you'll get lost, and I see people freeze.
Okay, so next question from Robin Bell, also at Imperial in London. Do you have any tips if you're trying to find a job in a completely new market, for example, in an industry job in Asia? Obviously, you could use LinkedIn, but if it's if you've really got no links and you're just relying on LinkedIn, are there other sort of methods that you can use to start up that networking?
Yeah, great question. The same process would apply, right? So I've seen people get hired on the other side of the world, no matter where they've started, right? Whether they were in the UK first or in Australia first, et cetera. The key is the same. It's no different than being in a very remote area. A lot of PhDs are in a very remote area. They need to network with people in the city. How do you do that? LinkedIn. LinkedIn is remove the barrier of remoteness. And then so you move from connecting with people in that country on LinkedIn, assuming they have LinkedIn. If not, you find out whatever the local LinkedIn type platform is. You connect with them, you set up informational interviews, and you use the question you just asked me to your advantage. Hi, I'm in the UK and I'm looking for a job in, I forget what you said, Singapore or wherever else. Could be anywhere in the world. What are some of the differences in working in Singapore versus the UK? Or what are some of the most important aspects of this industry role in Singapore and what are some of the social norms here that I may not be used to, having never lived in Singapore, right? So any confusion that you have, that's good. Don't hide from that. Like posturing, if you didn't understand what I meant when I said posturing, means you try to pretend like you know what it's like to work in Singapore and you try to show yourself as an expert. That's posturing. Don't do that. Instead, say, I have no idea how to work in Singapore. What's it like there? What's different? Right now, you're going to get help. You're the eager student instead of somebody who's trying to act like they're at somebody else's level, even though they're inexperienced.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the real starting point. I feel that a lot of people listening today need to go and update their photo, click the recruiter button and check their SSI score.
Yes.
That's their starting point for this evening.
I agree. You know, most of you are going to have a SSI score of 20 to 40. If you can get it to 50 to 60, that's a great score. You know, like it depends on what your goals are. Like my connections, I was in the 60s because my connections are very broad, which is fine depending on your goal. For you, all of you wanting to get into a certain industry, you'll want to really focus on connecting with people in that unique industry. And the more connected to a particular industry you are, that will raise your score up even higher. So there's no reason all of you couldn't get to a 50, a 60, or even a 70.
Okay, that's really good advice. So we've got two questions from Jack Hipnot at Imperial College again. What is the best way and the best resources where I can gain industry understanding while still in academia? You touched a bit on this in your last slide. A lot of us in academia have no idea really what's going on, like across that border, and just trying to, obviously through networking, you'll gain that understanding through asking the right questions. But are there any sort of resources that even just, I guess this is a very academic way of approaching it. Is there any reading I can do? And then the second part, sorry, answer that first and then we'll get part two.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously this is a huge gap that we see. We do a lot of training on this in the Cheeky Scientist Association. We have a more advanced program called Scientist MBA. We have free resources on this as well on our website at cheekyscientist.com. I just have to say, I think our resources are the best. So I would get those free resources. We have a couple of articles specifically. If you just Google business acumen, PhD, Cheeky Scientist, start there. You'll have all of my thoughts on it at your fingertips for free. Outside of that, really it just comes down to, you know, the 10-day MBA is a really easy read in terms of a book. If you're looking for like a book to, again, take on the tube or something, just start there and start understanding the language. It's really just like all of you had to learn a new nomenclature for your lab or your background, whether it's cell therapy, gene expression, et cetera, whatever your background is. That's what it takes to get into any industry, is learning the lingo, learning what words are used, learning what questions are being asked, and learning what the current trends are. Oh, and I would also say two good online kind of media publications that are very prolific are Fierce Biotech and Fierce Pharma. Read those, even if you can just consume the headlines in between experiments. You'll start understanding what is going on in industry as far as what companies are merging, what new products are coming out, what the trends are.
Okay. And Jack's second question, coming sort of from the other angle, was what are some of the important red flags about a company that you should really take note of that might sort of warn you, put you off? Is there anything that we should be looking for when we're going through this massively long process? Is there anything that we should really be taking notice of?
As a PhD, I would almost argue that you should not put up more limitations for yourself, because we have a very robust negativity bias. And so we're already looking for reasons not to work at a company or not to apply, et cetera. Every company is going to have people that might be disgruntled with that company for whatever reason. So any sort of online reviews, et cetera. Like when people are very happy with a company or happy working there, they don't go online and type a review, right? It's only the people that are upset. And so I think this is important, because as a PhD, if you're like, I'm going to look for all the Amazon reviews for whatever product, you know, that are bad, you'd never buy anything. So I would caution you against that. Instead, what I would do is talk to the people working at those companies. Talk to people that are there currently and get to that third level of professional intimacy and ask them what the work-life balance is like. There are some subtle things if you are on a site visit And if things don't match up, they say, we have a great work-life balance. And then nobody has pictures of their family or whatever in their office, right? Just as an example, nothing, no pictures of what they're doing outside or anything else. It's very sterile. That might be an indicator. If you notice people don't seem happy, if you want a non-aggressive environment and you go into a startup and it seems very fast-paced, very aggressive, et cetera, say, this may not be a fit for me. Don't lie to yourself and try to fit yourself into every box. If it's a larger company and it seems to be very slow, lots of regulations and rules, very little innovation, more kind of, they're just buying up other companies, and you want something faster paced and innovative, take note of that as well. And just realize that the company has to be a good fit for you too. Don't try to fit yourself to every company. So
really just use your instincts.
Yeah, and the data as it comes to you.
Okay, so our last question, we're approaching 5:30 now. What stage of your PhD do you recommend getting serious about applications and reaching out? It's been pointed out that companies probably want you to start quite soon, but I guess the same question could come from postdocs as well. At what point in your career should you be doing this? Should this be straight out of your PhD? What if you're 5 years into postdoc research? Is it too late? Does it get harder as you go along? Like, at what point should people be focusing on this?
Yeah, day one. I mean, so I'll kind of work backwards. If you're a postdoc, you have to know that if you plan on going to industry, the longer you stay in your postdoc, the more you damage your career. That's the hard truth. Nature Biotechnology published data on this, a 15-year follow-up data, right? A longitudinal study showing that people who do a postdoc, they never catch up in terms of salary or career trajectory to those PhDs who don't do a postdoc and go right into industry. Now, doesn't mean you can't get into industry still and be successful. It just means, look, every day that you're there, if you know you want to go into industry, go now, not later. They're not looking for more academic experience. They're looking for on-the-job industry training. And remember, robotics are going to be doing what you're doing right now in the lab. If you're a PhD student, right, sooner the better, because networking is such a huge component. You can build a network that is so robust. And you can use the student card as a PhD student. I'm just a student looking to connect with people that are working in different industries. I'm very excited about this field. Congratulations on your promotion. There's no pressure for them to get back to you within a week, right? So you can lengthen, right, that schedule of reaching out. You can reach out every 2 weeks. I would just build a spreadsheet of people you've reached out to, a simple job search spreadsheet. I mean, how many spreadsheets do you have for your data in the lab right now? Can you have one spreadsheet for your job search? And then if you're early in your career, first couple of years, follow up with that person every month even, right? Maybe even every 6 months if you're in your very first year. And then as you get closer to graduating, shorten the cycle. Then you're following up every 3 weeks, maybe every 2, every 1. Now you're asking to get on the phone and have an informational interview, see what jobs are opening up in the pipeline, so that when you defend, you have a job offer in hand. You're not unemployed, working for free, or doing any, in these impossible situations that a lot of PhDs are in.
So really do it now. Don't put this off for future you. Get doing it now.
And if I could say, I mean, I see most PhDs, they wait till they defend. They're like, I'll take care of that when I defend. I got to write my thesis after all. So what, right? Write your thesis in the morning and then prep your job. You want to have a job lined up, because it is not a good feeling to have defended and then realize you have no income coming in. You stay working for free, or you get into a postdoc because it's easier, right? There's more postdocs, and as academics, we're trained on that path much better. So then we kind of turn away from the hard work of learning the process of an industry job search. So don't do that. Don't wait till you're at a desperate moment. Do the work now.
Yeah. So we've had tons of questions actually, but I think we'll call it a day there. That 90 minutes has really flown past. Time flies when you're enjoying yourself, right? I think if people have further questions, I mean, they can follow you on social media. They can visit cheekyscientist.com. There's local resources there with a lot of the information that you've shown today. So people can engage still after this seminar.
Yeah, and my team just put up a website, cheekyscientist.com/BSGCT. And that should take you to our free resume ebook download. So it's free. The resume place is a good place to start. It goes into those bullet points. I can send that to Carly, but thank you very much, Carly, and thank you, everybody.
Great. So we'll just quickly close with outlining that obviously this is part of the BSGCT seminar series. So for all of the viewers, we will have more seminars upcoming. The next one will be probably in the late summer. So you can keep up to date on that by following us on Twitter or reading our newsletter. Better still, if you could join BSGCT as a member, you get access to all of that, but also so much more. We have a great mentoring screen that we're just rolling out for lots of stages through the early career researcher period in your career. We've also got great access to grants, travel grants, links to protocols and all sorts of regulatory information that you can access. And actually for people who are joining in from the US, you can join our sister society, ASGCT, and they have a huge number of perks as well. So I'd really encourage you to at least look at some of those membership benefits and see if you'd like to join. So from that, all that's really left for me to say is thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you very much for everybody who's submitted questions and really engaged with Isaiah. And thank you very much. A really special thanks on behalf of everybody, Isaiah, for sharing your expertise and your passion, which obviously is enabling PhD scientists all over the world to reach their career potentials. And I'm sure everybody listening feels really inspired to start making those steps today, whether they are staying in academia and just want to improve themselves or transition into industry. So thank you very much again, and goodbye everybody until next